Welcome everyone to Geo for Good 2019. First, let me thank you for putting up with some of our technical difficulties. And we're gonna push it even a little bit more. So Sean and I are going to do a live demo. We're gonna do no slides. And so to get this started, we have a little tradition at Google that I'd like you all to join us with. So put your hands together like this and bow your head and say a small prayer to the demo gods. So as Dusty said, I'm Gopal. I'm the product manager for Google Earth, and we have Sean. Sean is our engineering manager, and we're here to show you some things about what's new in Google Earth. And to start off, we thought we'd tell you a little story using Google Earth. And so if we could switch to the laptop, please. We're going to start by telling a story of two families. So my grandfather was born in India in 1920. And when he was 22, he joined Mahatma Gandhi's Quit India movement. Next slide, please. And this is my grandfather here. And he was born in a town called Rawalpindi, which is just a little bit north of the India-Pakistan border. And he joined that Quit India movement, and he was arrested. And so he spent 40 days in the Red Fort. And during that time was his graduation from his master's, but he wasn't actually able to graduate because he was in jail. And he got a certificate of externment and had to move 500 kilometers from Rawalpindi, which was now in Pakistan, to a town called Shimla. And so Shimla is a hill station, is what it's called, in the Himalayan mountains. And you'll see here, this is where he ended up settling. And he had no money. And so he had to borrow money from his aunt to set up a small restaurant, and then he was able to make it into a hotel. And that hotel actually ended up having an ice cream factory in the basement. So when I got to visit, I thought I was going to Disneyland. What I remember most, though, about visiting Shimla was the view from my grandfather's house. So Sean's going to pop into the Street View panel here. And he just had this beautiful view of the valley. And so when I think of my grandfather, this is what I remember, this view from Shimla. Pass it to Sean.
All right, so my grandparents were born in what was then called Czechoslovakia. And they lived in a small town called Mladá Boleslav, which is famous for the Škoda car factory. So if you're not American, you may have heard Škoda before. It's pretty common outside the US. And so much of the town is actually the factory here. And they lived right next door to it. So we're going to fly in. Here are my grandparents, Vladimir and Marta. And we're going to check out the little apartment building that my mom grew up in 50 years ago. And so from this little window on the 4th floor, every evening she would look out and then look down the street and wait for my grandparents to exit the factory out of this little gate and walk back home. So here's a little picture of my mom.
Oh,
super cute. Don't know where I got my good looks from. And my mom and my grandma. But unfortunately, that wasn't the only thing that came down the street. In August of 1968, down the same street and viewed from the same window, they watched Soviet tanks roll through. And basically, it was part of the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. And so these tanks were on their way to the capital city of Prague. And so this was kind of the beginning of a big journey for them, and they decided to flee Czechoslovakia, and they headed for Austria. And so we're going to go to a town called Traiskirchen, a little bit south of Vienna, to a refugee camp there that is actually still actively used and was heavily used during the European refugee crisis these past few years. And so these are the grounds that my mom and my grandparents walked. They actually stayed in this room while they were there, though this is a more recent picture. And they actually got their first little taste of America while they were here, because they were here on July 20th, 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon.
So around that same time, the late 60s, early 70s, my grandfather was able to save enough money up to send my mom to the US. And so she came and settled in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. And this is a view from the I hear somebody from Wisconsin? Yeah. Yeah. This is my favorite building in the world, the Milwaukee Art Museum. And she went there to get her PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which is just down the way. And it's there that she met my father. And the two of them were actually the benefactors of the 1965 Immigration Act, which opened up immigration from countries outside of Northern Europe. So that was great because they got to come and explore this new opportunity, but they were amongst the first Indians to move to this town, and so they were a bit like fish out of water. In fact, my dad told me a story just this weekend. It was actually his 74th birthday, and I was just chatting with him. And he told me when I moved to this country, one of my coworkers asked me if I knew any snake charmers in India. So that was the environment that these two were in. And they came together they were at a cultural event, trying to recapture some of their Indian heritage. And my dad was teaching Indian folk dance, and my mom didn't know how to dance, so my dad offered to give her private lessons, and the rest is history.
So my mom and my grandparents eventually got asylum here in the United States. And so via Oregon, they made their way to Ventura, California. And here's kind of a picture of the era. Pretty awesome 60s, 70s attire. And this, I think, was my mom's 18th birthday, if I remember correctly. I still have this clock, actually. It's hanging under my desk at work. So my grandfather was a machinist in the old world. And so he ended up working in the aerospace industry and built parts for a lot of different communication satellites. And he actually got to work on this, which is the ill-fated Mars Observer, which is either orbiting the sun or the Mars. They don't know because it died on the way. But somewhere out there, his handiwork is orbiting in space, which is pretty awesome. My dad also happened to be in Ventura at that time, and he was a good-looking police officer in uniform, riding a motorcycle, which I think was popular back then. And so, looking dapper. This is the swimming pool where they met. And you can barely see them, but this is my mom and my grandpa hanging out, and she's wearing a hot pink bikini, which apparently had something to do with what happened next, which is me. So this is me coming home. Not much later.
So now we fast forward to my generation. And growing up as a first generation American, you don't actually have deep roots in this country. And so I became a little bit of a rolling stone after high school. And I started, I went to high school in Wisconsin, that's where I grew up. Then I went out east for school, and I was in Pennsylvania. Then I came all the way west to California for my first gig here at Google, before finally settling in Colorado. Me and Dusty are together in the Boulder office. And so one of the things that drew me to Colorado was the mountains. And it's kind of a strange thing, but it wasn't until I was in Colorado for a couple years that I realized the reason I was so drawn to the mountains was because of my childhood experience. And so this is the view from where I live now, and so I get to also overlook a valley. And once I made that connection that I was drawn to this place because of my grandfather, I of course went straight to Google Earth and I did a little elevation check. And it turns out, and I kid you not, that my house is within 100 feet of elevation of my grandfather's. And I don't know how that happened, but it was some kind of cosmic connection. I just thought that was really nice.
So when my dad was in his early 20s, he was lucky enough to go to Tahiti and spend some time on a couple of the islands there. And so when I went to college and saw that my university offered a semester-long field biology course on the same island, Moorea, I'm like, yes, I have to go. This is clearly my destiny. And so we're flying down to Moorea. This is probably my favorite place in the world. It's an absolutely gorgeous island. And we're going to fly down to the Gump Station. It's a biological research station there, right on Cook's Bay, and dive in the street view. And this was my view for a number of months. It's just a gorgeous place. This is me snorkeling in little tiny streams that are about 12 inches deep, looking for freshwater fish. And I had such a good time there as an undergraduate, I decided to come back for my master's. And so I studied traditional Polynesian agriculture. This is me with a local farmer farming sweet potatoes. It was a lot of super hard work, as you can see. I also had hair, and I promise you goatees were in style then.
No, they weren't.
What it may seem.
No, they weren't.
Yeah. Anyway, So in addition to the traditional kind of ethnobotany work that I was doing, the other thing I was doing was data visualization of sensor networks, little sensor systems measuring the microclimate of different research stations around California. And so it was 2005, and Google Earth had launched, and I decided this is the perfect tool to basically work on for my master's thesis. And so this is us flying into the mountains of Southern California, and I'll kind of skip ahead. This is some GIS data that I'd pulled in. Kind of old school Google Earth, if you've been playing with it for as long as I have. A little cheesy, but little 3D models, and you can like fly into bird boxes and see nesting birds and the like. And so this actually led to me giving a tech talk here at Google, which is why I'm here today.
So we wanted to tell you this story for a couple reasons. The first is just to tell you how Sean and I got to this stage, and just to reflect on the fact that in 3 generations, we had family that started half a world away and started with very little, and through the grace we were able to be here with you. And that brings us to here and now, which is with you at the Google campus at MP7. And so we're going to switch gears now a little bit, and we're going to talk about, we talked about how we got here, and now we want to talk about how we got to this piece of technology that allowed us to tell you this story. And so we're going to rewind back to 2005 when Google Earth launched, and Sean's going to tell you a little bit about the history that brought us to this moment.
So Google Earth 2005 came out, kind of blew everyone's mind, right? You could see your house for the first time. People still like to see their house for the first time in Google Earth. But it just blew people away. We had 100 million downloads in, I think, the first week or so. Rumor has it we almost melted down a few servers. We didn't have as many servers then as we do now. And so it made a big splash. But it wasn't until a couple months later, in August, when Hurricane Katrina hit, that we at Google started getting a better sense of the potential importance and utility of Google Earth. And so I want to take you down to New Orleans just before the hurricane hit and show you the 9th Ward. This is one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in all of New Orleans. And so we're flying into this little street, and there's a little house here that we'll track step by step. This is on the 16th of August, and this is what the neighborhood looked like not much more than a week later. And that little house is still right here. After the floodwaters receded, it was complete chaos, a lot of debris on the ground, and a lot of people obviously homeless. We published a lot of fresh imagery from Google Earth and made it available to people. A lot of first responders actually ended up using this to rescue people off of rooftops because they couldn't use traditional road maps to navigate around. People would call and give their address, but their house may have literally moved. And just to give you a sense of what it looks like today, unfortunately, this neighborhood has never quite recovered. There are far fewer houses than there used to be, but this one house is still there. The next place I want to take you is off to Kenya. I was lucky enough to visit Kenya a number of times with one of my favorite partners over the years, Save the Elephants. And they work to conserve elephants in Africa. And so what we're going to check out is some GPS collar data that they have. They track a lot of their elephants in an effort to understand their biology, and also as in part an alerting system so that they know when they leave national parks and might be at risk at raiding farms, and therefore draw the ire of the local population. And so here, this is kind of an old school KML, but we are looking at, turn off historical imagery, we are looking at 2 bull elephants. One's named Tony, of course, and the other is Mountain Bull. And they're actually using this wildlife corridor and a couple of these underpasses that go under the freeway to safely make passage from one protected forest region to another. And this is Mount Kenya right here that we're looking at. The last place I want to take you in Earth Desktop is back to the Odyssey. So one of my favorite stories using Earth over the years is Google Lit Trips, founded by a guy named Jerome Berg. And so he and a bunch of other teachers have taken curriculum from schools here in the US and basically put their plot lines to the map. And so here you can actually follow Odysseus on this particular journey, visiting the sirens, et cetera. And it's a way to bring these stories to life for a lot of the students.
So we like to think of that time, 2005 and beyond, as the first golden age of Google Earth. And around that time, as you might imagine, technology was evolving very, very rapidly. And Google Earth was locked into a desktop. And people were adopting the web, and they were starting to use mobile devices. And we realized that if Google Earth is going to continue to be a tool for the future, it needed to be modernized. And so we took the opportunity to rewrite Google Earth from the ground up for web, Android, and iOS. And in 2017, we launched that new functionality as New Earth. And while we were rewriting the code base, we also took an opportunity to look at the app again and find ways to make it a little bit more approachable and a little bit more accessible for a lot of people. And so the first thing you'll notice about this new version of Google Earth is we put all the emphasis on the imagery. All of the Chrome is moved off to the side, and the globe and the imagery is front and center. And then we also simplified the menu, just put it on the left with a few buttons. And one of the things that we wanted to bring to life with New Earth was a sense of discovery. And so we introduced a few features to allow that. One of the fun ones is something we call I'm Feeling Lucky, which started as a 20% project. Very simple feature. You click on it, and it flies you to somewhere cool and random that you might get to learn about and you might not have heard of. And one of the cool things about this feature and just the camera technology in Earth itself is you'll see that it uses this orbiting camera to put a highlight on 3D. You'd be surprised how few people knew about the rich 3D imagery we actually have in Earth. And this feature and these cameras allow us to explore that. But the key feature of New Earth, the thing that we were most proud of when we launched, was a feature called Voyager. And Voyager is our storytelling platform or a magazine. How many people have heard of Voyager in this room? Okay, a good number of you, and I'm glad because a lot of you participated in bringing Voyager to life. And so, you saw all those wonderful stories that Sean was showing, which were KMLs that were locked to your desktop machine and you had to email around. We wanted to bring those stories to the front page of Google Earth. And today I want to highlight 3 of these stories that I think really showcase what is possible with Voyager. So the first is from our friends at Climate Central. Do we have anybody from Climate Central here? Layla? So thank you. She and her team helped us create this story, which, climate change is an abstract concept. It's very important. But, to bring it to life, we want to show the direct impact of what would happen if the temperature rose. So in this case, we can see what would happen if the temperature rose 2 degrees Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius in these coastal cities. And you'll see how much of Rio, for example, gets flooded just with that small temperature rise. So this allowed us to bring an abstract concept to life for a lot of people to really understand what was happening with global warming. The next story we want to share, as many of you probably know, this year is the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing on the moon. And to celebrate that, we teamed up with NASA. Is Jamie here? Yeah, Jamie. So our friends at NASA helped us put together this story, which showcases the time leading up to launch and all of the work that needed to go into it, the training that they went through. And if you jump ahead, we actually have street view of some of the most important points along that journey. So we'll pop over to the launch pad in Florida, and users can interactively explore this amazing structure, or they can go to Houston and go to Mission Control and be able to step inside and see what that's like. So again, it gives you an opportunity to immerse yourself, see all of the different places and people that had to come together to pull off this amazing event. And the last story I want to show you today is one that is one of the most ambitious undertakings we have taken to date. And it is the indigenous languages. Celebrating indigenous languages is the name of the story. And this year, 2019, the UN declared this year the Year of Indigenous Languages. There are 7,000 languages spoken in the world, and a third of them, or about 2,500, are in danger of going extinct. And so what we did is we worked with various partners to record these indigenous languages, and then this is our first audio-driven story. So Waikuki, am I saying? Did I say that right? From New Zealand, recorded some Maori, and so Sean will play that.
Tēnei te tai o ruhi, ka papiki ki te matahau, ko tū te ihi, ka tau.
And we have 10 other stories collected from the Pacific, and I believe there's a keynote later where you get to learn about how the story was made. And then we also had our friend Brian Tom record some audio in Canada from some indigenous there. I'm not going to try and pronounce this because this is meant to celebrate languages, and I don't want to butcher it. But I really encourage you guys to try this out and see all of the different languages we have around the world and listen to them and really hear how language informs culture and tradition and how important it is to preserve these things.
So Voyager has some really amazing, compelling content, but we really view it as a half step towards our ultimate goal when we tried to rebirth Google Earth. And I'm really excited to announce to all of you that next and final step towards that first vision, which is giving all of you the power to start creating stories like these on your own in Google Earth and to collaborate on them with your colleagues. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive live into Google Earth, and we're just going to make kind of a simple little map, a little story. You'll get a flavor of what's possible, and then you'll have other opportunities here at the workshop to learn more. So here we are again outside of MP7. We have a new drawing tools menu and a new projects panel here. So I'm just going to drop a little place mark. We'll call this MP7, save that to a new project, and we'll call this G for G 2019. Can't spell. I don't think we're making money here. So there we go. Free. All right, so, and I can customize this place a little bit. So, I can choose a different icon. We're gonna learn a lot hopefully this week. So I'm gonna search for a book icon, throw that in there. Let's pick something a bit more colorful to make it pop. And then I can provide a description, and I won't try to type anything exciting. I can also customize that 3D view, much like you can in Google Earth Desktop, and capture it, so that when people visit this stop in a story or a map, you can really faithfully recreate the view that you see here. You can also add Street View panoramas. So I'm going to turn on Street View, and let's try this one. This is probably the inside of the cafe. Yes. All right, dinner time. I don't think you all get to eat here, but I do. Neener, neener. So let's go ahead and save this to my story. We'll add this here, dinner time. And we'll save that to the story. One thing to note is that if you do a little HTML, a little JavaScript, just like in desktop Earth, we do allow you to switch to HTML mode and do a little extra coding and scripting here if you want. Or you can just kind of keep it simple and use the templates that we provide. The last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little title welcome slide to kind of delineate the story that I'm creating. So I'm going to add that full screen slide, and I'm going to say, welcome, can't spell, welcome, still can't spell, nervous, tiny keyboard, we'll just go with it. And I'll pick some really bright background color to blind all of you. So what this is going to do is create a little slide, and let me show you what I've created. So first stop, hooray, we're here at MP7. And I'm going to dive in the dinner time in that panorama. Like in the story that you saw of our families, you can add photos and videos to these pop-up windows if you want. And then there is lots of bright colors. The thing that kind of takes us beyond what you can do in Desktop Earth is the fact that we allow you to collaborate with people on these projects. Actually share this with Gopal, and if the demo gods are kind, we're going to hopefully see it on his phone in a second. Maybe. So
if we want to switch to my phone, it's really dangerous to have your email inbox on screen. But this is the story that Sean just shared with me. So I'll click on it, and you'll see G for G 2019. I will try and open it if the demo gods are kind to me. Give it a second. Who didn't pray? Oh, there we go. It just took a second. And so here we are in the story that Sean just shared with me. And there it is on mobile. I can pop open the table of contents. I can see his ugly slide. And I can, of course, go and get some food virtually in here. So what do y'all think? So in V1, you'll be able to edit on desktop, and you'll be able to view all your stories both on desktop and mobile. And so because that worked, I'm going to disconnect. Let's switch back to the laptop. We did give access to this to a few users in advance of our launch, and we just want to bring some of those stories forward to show you all what's possible with this tool and the breadth of it. So first we're going to jump over, and do we have Peter here today? I see him. Okay. Peter created this wonderful story using our creation tools, and I'm actually going to let him, through this video, introduce it.
One day I opened up a magazine and I saw this book review on the water walkers. And it was a children's book. It was about a lady who had walked around all 5 Great Lakes in her quest to bring awareness to water. At that point, I just knew I had to bring the book to my students. We found the author of the book, The Water Walker, on Facebook. And so I messaged Joanne, and in contacting Joanne, I also found Nokomis, Josephine Mandevin. I asked her if she would visit our classroom.
When he said Facebook, he meant Google+. So this started as a project in his classroom. They just found this woman and they learned about her story and they got really excited. This is a 5th and 6th grade class. They got really excited about preserving waters. And then this project grew. And I believe it's in 180 schools now across Canada. And it's about learning about waters, why they're important, the history of them, and why it's important to preserve them. So this is one example of how these tools can be used in education. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about these tools for conservation. So our friend Debbie from the Global Oneness Project, Debbie, are you here? She's here somewhere. I know she is. She created this great story that allows you to learn about the Florida Reef and its importance to the ecosystem, as well as the people that are trying to preserve it and the technologies that they're using. And one of the cool things that she's employed in this story is underwater street view. So you can dive under the surface of the water and look at these 360 panos to understand what's happening in this reef. And she's also using photos and videos, YouTube videos that are embedded. There are links off to learn more. So this is full of rich media, and we just wanted to show all the different types of things you can bring into a story to really bring it to life. And then the last story we want to share, do we have Josh here? Come on, Josh. I know I saw Josh. No? Okay. He's in the back, way in the back?
Up.
Oh, okay. I can't see you with the lights. So Josh is one of the most prolific trusted testers of this tool. And he used that HTML feature that Sean was alluding to earlier to customize this. And what you're seeing is Sean's not clicking anything, but it is moving in sync with this video. We've muted the audio right now, but there is audio that is coming through this video and it's moving in sync. So if you have a little bit of development skills, you can really take this and really push it and really start to build customized templates, customized flight paths, customized media to bring into your story. And so we just wanted to show that to kind of give you a sense of what's possible.
Great. So one thing I'd like to drive home, this is all of you on our map, at least all of you who provided geocodable addresses in the application form. And so, behind each of these pins is one of you and the stories of your work and your lives. And so we're really hoping that you can use Google Earth and the new creation tools that we're adding to bring your work to life and to new audiences.
So what do y'all think? Excited to try this? Yeah. This feature, which we call Creation Tools, has been a labor of love for over the last 2 years. I mean, since we started the New Earth project, we have had this in our eye, and you are the first audience to actually get to see it. So we are very honored to share it with you. And we hope you try it. We hope you give us lots of feedback. There'll be Googlers here all week to talk, and you hope you join us in your session. So thank you so much. Enjoy your Geo for Good 2019, and please come find us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks.